part 3, and if you think this is going to get more lighthearted, it isn't. One of the last and worst massacres was in Srebrenica. To get an idea of the change in numbers, the first row is the Muslim Bosniak, the middle row is the Orthodox Serb, and the last row is the Catholic Croat. In 1991, 75% of the population within Srebrenica was the Muslim Bosniak. Then in 2013, those numbers are a lot lower for both the Muslim Bosniaks and the Catholic Croat. This particular incident occurred July 11, 1995, and unalived more than 8,000 Bosniak Muslim men and boys. The Bosnian Serb army specifically targeted those who were not Serb. The war crimes committed by Ratko and the paramilitary unit Scorpions are horrible, and I don't think I really need to get into them here. Srebrenica was supposed to be one of the UN safe spaces, but the Serbs did not seem to respect that. It was under constant attacks since 1992. More than 3 years before the event in 1995, Bosnian Serb nationalists, with the logistical, moral, and financial support of Serbia and the Yugoslav People's Army, destroyed 296 predominantly Bosnian Muslim villages in the region around Srebrenica, forcibly uprooting some 70,000 Bosniaks from their homes and systematically massacring at least 3,166 Bosniak, at least those that are documented, including many women, children, and the elderly. I'll go through some accounts from survivors, but just know that these are not the worst ones. On July 11, 1995, my world changed forever. 5 days earlier, on July 6th, I had buried my youngest son. He was unalived by a Bosnian Serb grenade as their forces advanced on the UN safe areas of Srebrenica. I imagined things could not get any worse, but less than a week later I lost the rest of my family. My husband, Ramo, and son, Nerman, were captured and killed as they fled to the free territory of Tuzla. I, along with thousands of other women, waited at the refugee camp for my husband and son to arrive. They never did. It defies belief that only 50 years after the other event, this was once again rife in Europe. Srebrenica was lost to the world then as the Bosnian Serbs committed the worst crime on European soil since the Second Kerfuffle. Over 8,000 men were systematically executed. Between 20 to 50,000 women were as part of the organized ethnic cleansing regime. 600 children were unalived during the siege of Sarajevo alone. What appears mere statistics of casualties from conflict are in fact representative of a grave humanitarian injustice, which claimed the living sons of grieving mothers, the husbands of widowed women, and the fathers of orphaned children. She goes more into her story above, but I want to highlight the last paragraph. Later, I watched in horror at what had become of our men and boys. Video footage taken by Bosnian Serb forces emerged of my husband being captured with several others. He was calling up to Nerman, who was hiding in the mountains, to surrender. I cannot describe the excruciating pain I experienced watching. From another one, she describes what happened to her family as well. The soldiers yelled up at her, "Recognize your sons and husbands. This will be the last time you see them." I looked up and saw one of them was Mustafa. We made eye contact and then he bowed his head. It was the last time I saw him alive. I do not know what happened to Merudin, which is her son. As for my husband, Junis, I'm not sure how to say that. He was seen with a group of 1,000 captured men and boys who were herded into a warehouse and unalived. All of them were so gentle and kind-hearted, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't think about them. Feel free to pause and read the rest of her experience. He approached Kada, I'm not sure to say it, and asked where her son and husband were. At this, Kada draws her finger against her neck and says he told her while laughing harshly, "We will have fresh meat." The horror in her face was palpable. Another former neighbor came to her and took her brother away. He ended up coming back briefly to collect a leather jacket she recalls he loved. I asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "Don't ask," and that was the last I saw of him. All that night she recalls pressing bodies against one another and screams filling the air. Horrible, indescribable sounds. All night long they took women and young girls. Daughters were taken away and not all were returned. I was less than 10 meters away and heard the screams. They were wearing UN helmets, but they were not UN soldiers. I'm going to get into more of the information regarding people being bussed out, but I wanted to point this out. The following morning, the horrors continued as women waited to be placed on buses. In the mass of people, a 3-month-old baby was crying, and a soldier asked the mother to hush the baby. And you can feel free to pause and read that. Skipping down a little ways, on the bus, Kata recalls that the driver put the music on and the incongruous nature of its jaunty tune with what she had just witnessed. He turned around to face the passengers and told them chillingly, "Women, take care of your children. You have no one and no one wants you." Again, you can pause to read. Today, there is a memorial where this occurred. Not only are there headstones, but there is a list of those that they were able to identify, and there are still efforts to try and identify the rest of them. While there is a lot of focus on the men and the boys that were unalived, that's not the entire story. Just because some of them were not unalived during this doesn't mean that they're just doing okay. It ranks among the worst atrocities in modern European history. The of Bosnian Muslims by Serbs during the Balkan conflict. Horrifically, tens of thousands of survivors must now live next to the person that did it, seeing them daily. Above is the story of one of the survivors. They had their eyes set on teenage girls. Many of the girls wore their father's big shirts to cover their bodies. If you looked feminine, or if they knew you previously and wanted, they would just take you. And again, you can feel free to pause and read the rest of that. From the account earlier, she thinks it was a neighbor from her village. However, when she was shown photos at the tribunal that were taken after the war, she didn't recognize him, and there's a lot of reason why that might occur. Women are, for the most part, strangely missing from the walls of the Srebrenica Visitor Center in Podgorica. Doing nothing to stop the slaughter of more than 8,000 Muslim men, the most memorable female images were drawn in a crude graffiti by the Dutchmat, I don't know how to say that either objectifies or insult. A number of the Dutch soldiers stationed there have since committed. Others have returned to the site to face up to their feelings of guilt. The woman in this article talks about how she treats all three groups. While Bosniaks were the most systematically, it was used as a weapon of war by and against all sides. She says that the Croat women are the most difficult to reach. They don't want to talk about it, they are dedicated to their faith, and they believe only faith will help them find a way. The depth of trauma is the same for all three religions, but the social environment has a huge effect on the trauma. The family is the foundation, and if the family accepts what has happened, then the chance of the women coming to terms with it improves drastically. For the vast majority of the victims, the is compounded by a second trauma. 95% of the women are now victims of DA, because their husbands cannot accept what happened to their wives. Even those who married a girl knowing she had been will repeat this. They tell them things like if they hadn't married her, no one else would. It proved too much for Rana, and in 1997 she attempted This is a quote that I think is really important. I feel I am unalive, even though I am not really. I often wish that I had that day. The only comfort I can find is in telling myself that I am not alone. I talk to other women who have been through the same thing and see how they are coping with it. If I'm busy at work, then I can forget sometimes. But the most vivid memories in my life are the ones from that day. Not only do those who have survived continue to deal with the children that were born of this wartime thing have a lot of difficulty. They're called invisible children. Anya is one of those, and she is the first one to be registered as that born of during this war in the 1990s. She describes to a packed Sarajevo theater the discrimination and bullying she endured as a child with an unknown father and a mother branded as a The stories of the children conceived through wartime remain mostly unspoken because of the stigma attached to the victims, and because children were not told of their origins. One of the things that they are working toward is to be identified as war victims. By doing so, it allows them to get things like financial aid for education. The article says that there are 2,000 to 4,000 children born out of war, but in reality, they don't necessarily know the actual number for a few different reasons. The topic is taboo. These people are neither Serbian nor Bosnian. They are invisible. Now adults, they struggle to cope with the past and its consequences. These children were labeled G3nocs, and also this intended to prevent the captives and their families from returning to the region. At some point, society is more offended by the crime than the victim herself. Even if you adopt them, you are met with attitudes like, when that little G3noc grows up, I hope he unalives you. In Bosnia, a newborn citizenship is based on the principle of however you pronounce that, which means it depends on the parent's nationality. In the next one, I'm going to talk about how this is discussed today.